They're coming. The revolution is here. The world's most powerful monarchy stands on the edge of collapse. But was it doomed from the start? Was it hunger, corruption, or something far more dangerous? By the end of this video, you'll see how an entire kingdom unraveled and why its lessons still echo today. For centuries, France was a kingdom built on privilege. At the top, King Louis XVI, ruling by divine right. Below him, the nobility and clergy, drowning in wealth. And at the very bottom, the Third Estate, 97% of the population, burdened with crushing taxes, forbidden from power, and starving in the streets. A mother clutches a crying child as she stares at an empty breadbasket. But the nobility? They didn't care. The king? He barely noticed. And the Third Estate? They had nothing left to lose. And an empty stomach? That is the most dangerous thing of all. At the same time, the Enlightenment was spreading radical ideas. Thinkers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Voltaire, and Montesquieu questioned the legitimacy of absolute monarchy and advocated for equality, liberty, and popular sovereignty, the idea that government derives its power from the people. Their writings fueled resentment toward the system, inspiring the revolutionaries who would soon take action. Think of it like a pressure cooker. The heat kept rising, high taxes, famine, inequality, but the lid remained shut. When the steam had nowhere to escape, an explosion was inevitable. Adding to the inequality was the corvée labor system, a form of unpaid labor forced upon peasants by the state for public projects like roads and bridges. While the nobles and clergy were exempt, the common people were burdened with heavy workloads without compensation. At the center of it all was King Louis XVI, a hesitant and indecisive ruler. He was well-meaning, but lacked the political skill to handle the deepening crisis. Every attempt at reform, whether economic or social, was either blocked by the nobility or half-heartedly enforced, leaving France spiraling toward disaster. France wasn't just broke, it was bleeding money. Years of war, the 7 Years' War, 1756 to 1763, the American Revolution, 1775-1783, had buried the country in debt. By 1788, nearly 50% of the state's budget was being used just to pay interest on these debts. And yet, Versailles carried on. Feasts, banquets, silk gowns worth more than an entire village's income. The monarchy needed money, fast, but who would pay? Not the First Estate, clergy, not the Second Estate, nobility. The burden fell on the Third Estate once again. Finance Minister Jacques Necker tried to fix the crisis by calling for taxation of the privileged classes, but the nobility resisted. When Necker was dismissed in 1789, the public saw it as proof that the monarchy was unwilling to change. Meanwhile, revolutionary newspapers and pamphlets, such as those by Jean-Paul Marat and Camille Desmoulins, spread anger throughout the population. These publications exaggerated royal extravagance and painted Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette as out-of-touch elites. The media fueled unrest, uniting people in their hatred for the monarchy. Peasants struggled to buy bread, and the average laborer spent up to 80% of their daily income just on food. The bread crisis wasn't just about hunger, it became a symbol of royal indifference. And when a king ignores his people's suffering, he does so at his own peril. For the first time in 175 years, the Estates General was called. The last time this meeting had taken place was in 1614. It was meant to be a way to fix France's finances. But the Third Estate had other plans. The king dismissed their demands. The nobles smirked, but the Third Estate grew restless. And so, they walked out. They swore an oath. They vowed, "We will not disband until we have a constitution." This was defiance. This was revolution. To make matters worse, crop failures in 1788 and 1789 left food supplies dwindling, increasing food prices, and intensifying the public's desperation. Beyond Paris, the countryside was in chaos. A wave of paranoia known as the Great Fear spread. Peasants, fearing a noble conspiracy to starve them, began attacking manor houses and burning feudal records. This was not just a political revolution, it was the destruction of the old order. But the king? He still wasn't listening, and his silence would lead to blood. July 14th, 1789. The people were done waiting. In the heart of Paris stood a prison, the Bastille, a symbol of royal tyranny. Inside, only 7 prisoners. But the people didn't care. They wanted weapons. They wanted justice. The soldiers fought back, but the people won. The Bastille fell. And across France, something terrifying began. Peasants rose up against their lords. The revolution had begun. Meanwhile, in Paris, the newly formed National Guard, led by Marquis de Lafayette, took control of the city, acting as a stabilizing force. Lafayette, initially loyal to the monarchy, found himself torn between revolution and order. The National Guard adopted the tricolour cockade, symbolizing the unity of the revolution. October 1789. The revolution reached the palace itself. A crowd of women, angry, starving, marched to Versailles in pouring rain, and they had one demand: bread. The mob stormed the palace. Royal guards were slaughtered. The king and queen were dragged to Paris, prisoners in their own city. And as their carriage rolled through the streets, the people shouted, "Long live the nation!" Not the king, not anymore. As the revolution continued, the guillotine would rise, turning public execution into a national spectacle. Soon, King Louis XVI's head would roll. This was part 1 of a 4-part series of the French Revolution. Be sure to check out part 2 of the French Revolution coming soon.